That's why we have decided to present the real figures. Where are the drug trafficking relations? Where's the production of drugs? Where do we find the real routes of drug trafficking of different types of illegal substances? The lawful framework that must accompany the fight and international struggle against drug trafficking, as it is the Convention on Psychotropic Substances of the UN, the Convention of the UN against illicit traffic of drugs, and the Convention for the Prevention of Illegal Drugs. There is a law framework that implies the collaboration, cooperation, and aid among countries to face the international drug trafficking crime that must also be carried out according to the national international law framework through justice and police in their different organizations and jurisdictions. In any case, it is foreseen the military action to repress, sanction, and persecute a crime that are categorized as a common crime, as it is drug trafficking. The deployment of ships in front of Venezuela that aim to attack the sovereignty of our country, to carry out an armed action against the Venezuelan people, in the face of which the Venezuelan truth must come. The first is to go to the sources, to data, to statistics that come from specialized agencies within the United States, as the United Nations and international organizations that have been doing follow-ups and studies on the subject. Yearly report of drugs of the United Nations against drug trafficking and against drugs and crime. The first report came in 1999, and we decided to bring them all from 1999 until 2025. Year 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, amid the COVID-19 pandemic, 2021, 2022, 23, 24, and the current year, 2025. During these 27 years in a row, Venezuela does not show as a relevant country that has to do with illegal drugs. Venezuela, I will say it again, in its category, international category, is not a country relevant regarding drug trafficking, nor crimes related to drug trafficking. It is in all these reports from 1999 until 2025. Their statistics coincide with ours. This information has been shared by the Vice President Diosdado Cabello, by Padrino Lopez as well. When we go to the official maps, the routes of cocaine, only 5% aims to go through Venezuelan territory. And of that 5%, we have a reach of 70% seizure and destruction of that drug that intended to cross Venezuelan territory, that is submitted to great pressures due to the long border with the main producer of cocaine in the world. There we can see that Colombia is the first country in terms of production of cocaine in the world. Peru is the second, and Bolivia is the third. What does this mean? That Venezuela, firstly, is not a country that produces cocaine. Secondly, it is not an important route, a relevant route in the export of cocaine. There you have the three producers, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia. And now, let's go and see the routes. The routes of cocaine, 87% exits from Colombia, from Ecuador, to go to the United States. 8% that goes through Guajira Colombiana, and 5% that tries to go through Venezuelan territory. There it is. So which is the main route for the export of cocaine? Very clearly it's the Pacific. If an international coordinated activity with the involved countries were to take place, truly the gathering of forces, the ships, should be on the Pacific. If they truly did not want that drug to reach the United States, if that is their true intention to stop the arrival of cocaine to the United States, that unfortunately faces a real issue of public health due to the high figures of people dead due to overdose. Venezuela, on the contrary, has given an extraordinary management, an extraordinary development to stop the pressure that comes from producing countries, so that this territory does not turn into a territory for the transit of drugs or the harvesting of drugs. So far this year, over 56 tons have been destroyed. When we compare this to what happened when the DEA existed in Venezuela, and without the DEA, we know we do it better than when the DEA was here in Venezuela, this U.S. agency that specializes in drugs. We know to do it better. That's what the figures say. We seize more drugs. We have more coordinated work to achieve a clear objective where countries overall have the interest to face this, and that it is done in accordance to the law.
In other news, the BRICS members agreed on Monday to promote a fairer multipolar order capable of responding to the demands of the Global South. The statement was made during a bloc's virtual extraordinary summit in which its members also denounced that trade had become a tool for intervention in the internal affairs of other countries, undermining world development. They also reaffirmed their commitment to preserving and strengthening multilateralism, as well as reforming international institutions. On the other hand, Chinese President Xi Jinping assured that the BRICS will withstand international turbulence and continue its sustainable development.
As we speak, transformation unseen in a century is accelerating across the world. Hegemonism, unilateralism, and protectionism are getting more and more rampant. Trade wars and tariff wars waged by some countries severely disrupt the world economy and undermine international trade rules. At this critical juncture, BRICS countries, standing at the forefront of the Global South, should act on the BRICS spirit of openness, inclusiveness, and win-win cooperation.
Well, Mr. President, it's a great pleasure to be here. We have the same color on our shirts. We look like a Gaida group. Well, Mr. President, we're very happy to be here in these times. We were listening that the era has to birth a heart. But we don't separate economics from Venezuela because probably all the threats, they will try to stop our efforts, our history, our economics. And we wish to start this conversation with 4 news. They have to do precisely with the economical subject in Venezuela. Commerce between Venezuela and Colombia rose 53.65% between 2022 and 2024. Coffee's here. Good news. Venezuelan coffee. This was said by the Ministry of Foreign Commerce. She informed that the commerce between Venezuela and Colombia closed in 2024 in $1,037 million. Another news that has to do with food. We are, if I'm not mistaken, consuming about 90% of what we produce. Before we were waiting for the ports for what we want to eat, but now we're waiting in the ports but to export. In 4 years, the intake of chicken increased in 188%, since the Congress says in Venezuela. 4 years ago, it was 9 kilos per person, and now it's 26 kilos per capita for this year. This is correct. I am seeing in the screen what you're reading. Those are the web portals and live. The Office of the Third News for the UN for Development says that Venezuela is expecting its petrol sector to grow from 3.4% to 5.8%. The petrol subject is in the center of the debate when it's related to Venezuela. In La Guaira, we're building, or it has already started, the construction of a wheat plant to sustain the international and the national demand. And I am repeating my question. In these times, many would think that the economy would stop, that Venezuela would stop, will paralyze, and these news from private media also, they seem to say otherwise. The economy has been a battlefront because precisely one of the elements that started very strongly since Chavez left was the economic war. The last time that I talked with Chavez, it was on February 22nd, if I don't remember incorrectly. Diosdado came here on the 18th with Mr. Chavez, and I remember in the morning, and then he called us in a meeting that lasted for 5 hours in the hospital. It was the last time we talked. It was a meeting that took around 5 hours, but we stopped for 2 hours, then a stop again. And he was very lucid, an immense lucid. He probably felt that he was very close to the last hour of this life, and he warned us of several things. Diosdado is a witness, Jorge Arriaza is another witness, and one of the things he insisted on was the economical war, and he explained to us the scheme, because besides the experience that we had, our years in the government fighting as deputies,
we were very innocent still, and he warned us of the main elements of the economic war that might come. He was very sure that that was where they were going to attack, and that's where they attacked. And yes, they hurt us a lot. They took from us the 99% of our income. A country that exported the 85% of what it consumed. And the very little that was left, they hid it. Everyone remembers that. And how did we grow that out? With a plan, with a lot of hard work. From the hardest difficulties, from the blockades, the aggressions to our economy, we reinvented ourselves. We all, because it was not a task or something that Maduro did or the government did, we were that, has allowed us to supply the country and us to be in conditions of growing a lot more land and start to export in better conditions, healthy foods, and the best prices of the world. You are giving very key data. The international commerce with Colombia, thanks to decisions of President Petro and our government, the borders are working better and better, and the commerce is just growing. You give data about, yes, it's guaranteed totally from national production and for an international commerce that it's very fluid. You gave some data there that is very important. The industrial establishment that allows us to export, that is also growing. In investment, 2025 has consolidated the growth of our economy, a new economy that's diversified, a PIB that is growing very vigorously in the enforcement of the economy that's not related to the petrol, but also the ones that are related to that. They are all receiving a lot of inversion, and we are growing with our own efforts. I feel very identified always, since I was very young, with the thought of Ho Chi Minh when he said, we have to think with our own heads, build with our own hands, and walk with our own feet. We have learned to walk with our own strength, and that's what I tell our people. Let's not wait for anything except for that, then we can do. Everything else is a gain. Don't expect anything from anyone else but yourself. That's why I believe that the economy must continue its course. Every single center, all the entrepreneurs, the businesses, they have to continue their processes, the reposition, the reinvestment in machinery. In Venezuela needs to keep betting on the biggest economical growth and stability and find the way to the development of the 13 motors that has no way of being lost. The 13 motors model is our model, articulated to the world. Venezuela is open to investments because it knows that in every motor, what it has to do, where does the money has to go, where does technology have to go, where does effort have to go, where does the market, international, national, and that creates virtuous cycles, regionals, sub-regionals, nationals, that allow the economy to have its own dynamic. Every economy must have its own. Everything else, a neocolonial economy like the one we've had, that depends like the one we had, it doesn't have a future. The economies have to look for their own potentials. Every country has potential. All countries. One has potentials to the sea, other has potentials to the land, other to minerals, other to hydrocarbons, other to the great innovation in technology. Well, you have to join all the potentials. That's why the 13 Motors plan, I'm going to tell you, we have built that plan with a lot of international intelligence, with national intelligence, national dialogue, national consensus. It is the perfect plan to continue our path in our economical development that's by ourselves and will allow to satisfy our necessities. President, there is a deployment, a naval deployment in Caribbean coast that is making the world very worried. We have done in 2 very debate-intense days with international intellectuals that are precisely talking about over 400 intellectuals and artists of all the world, but also the SELAC, Mr. President. The SELAC expresses in business. It is very worried, deeply worried, because of the naval deployment of the United States. The minister of the national states expressed this Friday their very deep concern for the naval deployment that has happened in the region, in accordance with a communique that was in the Telegram channel. In the middle of very growing tensions between Venezuela and the United States, I laugh at that expression. Excuse me, and I'm gonna have a comment, and I agree with you. I'm gonna comment with you about these news. Tensions between the United States and Venezuela. We show our concern, someone says some, for the tensions between tensions. It's aggression of the United States to Venezuela. Aggression. They're not tensions. Those are euphemisms that they look for to normalize aggression, from a Goliath to a David, from a big province to a Pacific country. Tensions. See? So every journalist, all the news agency, AFP, all of those agencies, especially Reuters, tensions grow. Tensions grow. Maduro is moving his militias, and he's making tensions grow. And what do you want us to do? There's a joke that I always remember. Do you know the Roman Colosseum? Yes, a little bit. You studied in Rome. The Roman Colosseum. It survived all of the epochs. I know that, the Colosseum. So I'm at the Colosseum in Rome, where the spectacles were done, typical from the Roman Empire. So there's a joke that says that they once took a Christian that they took out of one of the catacombs for following Jesus Christ, and they take him. They put him in the Colosseum, in the sands of the Colosseums, and the Colosseum is filled of people chanting death, death, death. They scream at the Christian. They have him chained to the hands and the feet. They opened a hole. They put the Christian in there. They cover his whole body except his head, and then they have a lion come out, very big lion. And the lion comes out, and the people start screaming, "Eat him!" And then suddenly, the lion is walking around the Christian's head, and the Christian grabbed one of his testicles. You know what a testicle is? And the lion starts screaming and screaming. And then the Romans start screaming, "Dirty, let him go, play nice, let him go." And that's what they're doing with Venezuela, just like that. We don't have a right to defend our sovereignty. We don't have a right to defend our story, our glorious story. We don't have a right to defend our land, our people. No. Tensions. Euphemism of cowards to say tensions. Now, outside of this comment, I'll have another. Yesterday, as a director of Iguana.tv, something similar happened. We saw that a progressive media was talking about tensions, and I was telling the people from the editorial council, it's very similar to the tensions between Israel and Gaza. That's correct. Tensions grow. The Palestinians are protesting against the bombing. It's Hitler's time, just like Hitler's time. Tensions between Czechoslovakia and Germany. and Germany was sweeping Czechoslovakia. And Washington laundries in Paris were saying that's gonna be it. Tensions between Polonia and Hitler, and Germany, and Washington, London, and Paris were saying that's gonna stop very soon. Until they took Paris, tensions between Paris and Germany. Then they took Paris, and that's when they realized that it was not tensions, it was a great aggression. But commenting about the select, the communique from the select is a historic communique because it reaffirms what was approved in Havana in the January of 2014 and has been rectified year by year in every communique of consensus between the 23 states of SELAC, community of Latin American and Caribbean states, and it's that Latin America and the Caribbean are a peace territory. And the announcement that they put 1,200 missiles, one submarine, flagrantly violates the consensus that is almost a decree for a region of being a peace territory. And also putting there a nuclear submarine has generated, it's been an embarrassment for the whole world to put a nuclear submarine, just pointing to a Pacific people, the thinking that our people are gonna shake. And yes, we're shaking from rage, from patriotism, because that's what we have. So I'm very thankful to the community and the presidency, the Colombian presidency of the community of Latin American and Caribbean states for this gesture that is so powerful to clear the path to peace and defense.
And it says that the banana companies linked to the president of Ecuador are the main link for the cocaine traffic to the US and to Europe. That is the truth, and everything else is just a campaign that is trying to impose a narrative to justify a military aggression, to achieve a change of government in Venezuela, and to seize our resources. That is the truth. And as Artigas said, with the truth, I cannot offend anyone and I cannot fear anyone, and we are defending the truth of our country in front of the world to defend our tranquility, our peace. We are not overestimating the threat at any moment. We are just setting our truth where it should be. And they are mounting a Hollywood-worth movie of lies. And the population of US should know that they want to drive you into a war in South America in order to seize the oil of Venezuela, and that the people of Venezuela want peace, they want tranquility, and they don't want to accept any type of aggressions on its territory, because it's a sacred territory where the liberator of South America and America was born, Simón Bolívar. Thank you so much, Mr. President. I have some new information as well, because you asked that question, because at that conference with the Vice President, it was great. Nothing could be lost there. That press conference that the Vice President gave. One piece of information, this is drug trafficking. We know where they carried out, and when the drug reaches the U.S., how does it enter? Who is benefiting from that trade? So the Office of the United States Against Crimes is saying that this is producing a tremendous amount of profit for this trade, representing a significant percentage of the GPA of the United States. The known bank of the United States. Regarding fentanyl, that 57% of money laundering suspicious activities regarding the fentanyl, they have done it through traditional banking operations, The United States government recognizes that the real estate investment, the luxury purchases, they are all used for money laundering related to drug trafficking in the United States. This is all in the World Report. They are admitting that Las Vegas or Atlantic City, where a great activity of casinos is concentrated, they are benefited by this money laundering. It's not me who's saying it, it's U.S. reports and the UN who are saying this. So this is a great topic. Whoever wants to debate this on this topic, we are ready to defend our truth on these topics. And the whole narrative, the dirty narrative that they have tried to impose on the face of the morality of the Bolivarian Revolution, of the high legitimate authorities of Venezuela. It's just the worst thing that they could do from criminals and gangsters that will be. And we continue with some international reactions to the situation in the Caribbean as Brazilian President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva criticized the presence of the U.S. military forces in the Caribbean Sea, asserting that it is incompatible with the peace that prevails in this region.
No puede ser. No debería haber
It can't be. There can be no confusion about the public security challenges being faced by many countries. These are different phenomena that should not serve as an excuse for interventions outside the scope of international law. Latin America and the Caribbean chose in 1968 to become a nuclear weapons-free zone. For almost 40 years, we have been a zone of peace and cooperation. The presence of the armed forces of the greatest power in the Caribbean Sea is a source of tension that is incompatible with the peaceful nature of this region. Dear friends, in 2 weeks we will meet in New York for the 80th General Assembly of the United Nations.
We continue with more information. French Prime Minister François Bayrou on Monday, handing President Macron the task of finding a fifth prime minister in less than 2 years. The parliament's decision comes just hours after Bayrou warned that the country was facing life-threatening debt and tried to implement a plan to cut about $52 billion to reduce it. The ruling brings about the 74-year-old leader's resignation, together with the entire cabinet, forcing President Macron to start the process of forming a new government from scratch. According to the Prime Minister's office, Bayrou will tender his resignation on Tuesday. And we go now to the United Kingdom as London authorities evacuated Heathrow Airport's Terminal 4 for a few hours on Monday due to the possible presence of hazardous material. The decision comes after the London Fire Brigade said that its crews were called to the terminal at about 5 p.m. local time to carry out an assessment on the suspicion of the presence of the dangerous materials. Firefighters were stood down at around 8:20 p.m. local time after a special investigation did not find any trace of any adverse substance. However, the London Metropolitan Police announced in a statement that the cause of the incident remains under investigation. According to airport authorities, Terminal 4 is safe to reopen and that everything possible is being done to ensure that all flights depart as planned.
That's why we have decided to present the real figures. Where are the drug trafficking relations? Where's the production of drugs? Where do we find the real routes of drug trafficking of different types of illegal substances?